Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage author, filmmaker, and political activist, Dinesh D'Souza.
Thank you. Wow, guys, I'm so excited to be here. Delighted to be part of BLEXIT. And what a critical time for our country now. What's the end game for the left today? We see all the tactics that they're doing. Paramilitary gangs on the street. Something that I don't think I've seen in my lifetime. You'd have to go back to Italy in the 20s to see armed thugs attacking business owners. Then a deep state, by which we mean the police agencies of government, somehow weaponized to go against political opponents. What is the left up to? Those are the means, but what is the end? What's their goal? Their goal is, I think, socialism. Socialism. They want us to be the United States of socialism. Now, socialism is the most discredited idea since slavery. It has been tried in 25 countries. It has been failed everywhere it's tried. It has produced a body count that approximates 100 million. And yet, powerful people want to bring it back. It makes no sense. You know, slavery is dead. I suppose there are certain forms of slavery that still exist. But there's no political party anywhere in the world that advocates slavery. You don't have a group of people anywhere in the world who say, well, you know, slavery was actually an excellent concept, but the implementation was poor. This time we're going to get it right. But that is what people do say about socialism. Now, if you look at the socialism being promoted by the left today, the socialism that has kind of migrated from Bernie to Biden and Harris, it is actually different in a couple of respects that are worth commenting about. The first, the left says it's democratic socialism. It's not authoritarian socialism. They say we don't want to be like Mao or Stalin. This is democratic socialism. It's sanctified by the idea of democracy itself. But if you think about it, democracy doesn't actually sanctify any kind of confiscation at all. When I was a kid, I used to go to school, and at recess we'd play marbles, and I'd carry, 10 marbles in my pocket. So imagine if I was jumped by a bunch of guys, or one guy, who attacked me and took my marbles. Authoritarian socialism. One guy is seizing my possession by force. But here's the second scenario. I fall in with a bunch of guys, they take a vote, the 10 of them, and 8 of them agree, let's knock down Dinesh and take his marbles. In both cases, I've been robbed. And the fact that 8 guys voted to rob me collectively doesn't make it any more just than if one guy did it. So the democratic socialism doesn't solve the problem. Now, second, the left says, and we can observe this, their socialism is not the socialism of class, it's the socialism of identity politics. In other words, it is socialism married to identity politics. We were talking in the green room a moment ago about some of these athletes like LeBron James. Well, but let's think about it. It's very tempting to say, that guy's so dumb, he doesn't know what he's saying. But the truth of it is, he actually does know what he's saying. Let's try to think about what is LeBron, and I use him here as a metaphor for a larger phenomenon. What are these guys up to? Well, here's what they're up to. Here you have LeBron James, a guy who's making, what, 80, 90, $100 million a year. And think of the lifestyle that goes with that. It is a lifestyle of indescribable luxury. You don't actually have to move a finger. Some of us who are lucky enough might have a maid who comes to our house and cleans it once a week. LeBron James has domestic staff. Most of us feel really good if we get to travel first class. LeBron James has a private plane. So if you look at LeBron James, let's say compared to some ordinary guy, some working class guy who makes $50,000 a year, LeBron James actually makes 2,000 times what that guy makes. So if you were to apply kind of a Marxist analysis, LeBron James would be the oppressor, and that guy would be the victim. According to Marx, and you can only imagine what Marx was thinking about capitalists who ran big businesses. Imagine if you told him, here's a guy who basically bounces a ball. And he makes 2,000 times what another guy does who works like 60 hours a week. So LeBron James knows all this. He doesn't want to be having a class discussion in which he has to explain why, in exchange for what he does as an athlete, and by the way, think of what it means to be an athlete. I'm not denying that athletes work hard, but by and large, an athlete is a major winner of the genetic lottery. Right? You or I can work hard. We can't get on the NBA. We have no chance. So it's a very clever move then to take the class analysis out and flip the lens in the camera and stick in the race card. Because now LeBron James gets to go up to some guy, whether it be black or white or Asian, it doesn't matter, and basically say, you owe me, buddy, because I, LeBron James, am black, and so I am a victim. And you are white, you could be treated differently by a cop who stopped you on the street, you're my oppressor. So in addition to all the indescribable privileges that these athletes have, on top of it, they want the moral credentials of being a victim. So the socialism we're talking about here, I call it identity socialism, because it marries. See, Marx divided the world into just two groups, the rich and the poor. That's it. But the left today divides America many different ways. Rich against poor, true. Also black against white. Also male against female. Also straight against gay. Also legal against illegal. So division is the name of the game. And what is their goal? Their goal is to create a majority coalition of oppressed victims. They want to assemble a coalition of 51% so they can then ultimately loot and oppress the other 49%, namely us. Their socialism is not just about money. It's not just about picking your pocket or taking your earnings. It is about that, but it's also about running your life. It's about telling you what to think. It's about controlling what you say in public. It's establishing a regime of conformity. It is ultimately about regulating the way you express your religious opinions, whether you own a gun. So this isn't just about repressing our economic freedom. It is about repressing our freedom, pure and simple. That's their goal. They want to turn us into worms. And the reason they hate people like me, like Candace, like Trump, is we won't go along. We won't play with their narrative. want to talk about a couple of tidbits of American history because so much of what the left has been doing is trying to sanitize and rewrite and reinterpret the narrative of America. And one of the reasons the New York Times came up with this idea of the 1619 Project, one of the reasons that the left targets the monuments, not just the Confederate monuments, but the monuments at all, is they're trying to conceal an important fact that is concealed in virtually all accounts of American history, and that is that the Democratic Party was established, it was founded on a very clever bargain to protect the slave plantation. That is the actual origin of the party. Let me explain. So the first Democratic president was a war hero, Andrew Jackson, a slave owner, and very popular because he had been the hero of military expeditions. His election and re-election were pretty well assured. But his vice president was a man named Martin Van Buren, a northern Democrat from New York, who wanted to make the Democratic Party the permanent party of America, to have it dominate American politics for 50 years, which, by the way, it did until the Civil War. And Martin Van Buren, although a northerner, realized that the way to do that was to go south, and so he made these secret trips to the south, and he met with a guy named Thomas Ritchie. Thomas Ritchie was the sort of most influential spokesman for the slave plantation owner class. Ritchie was the editor of the Richmond Enquirer, and he was the most influential Virginian that spoke as a sort of voice for slavery. And Martin Van Buren had a series of secret meetings with Ritchie, the content of which is not known, but what we do know is what Van Buren subsequently wrote to Ritchie in a letter that says, in effect, this. He said, look, he goes, you slave owners need help because there's an abolition movement that is brewing in the North that is going to be attacking slavery in the North. At this point, he didn't know about the Republican Party. There was no Republican Party, but there were abolitionists. And so Martin Van Buren says we need to have a force in the North to block the abolitionists and protect slavery in the South. He goes, you can defend slavery in the South, but you need friends to do it for you in the North. He goes, that's the job of the Northern Democrats. So the bargain he proposed is that the slave owner class supports the Democratic Party, in return for which the Democratic Party in the North blocks anti-slavery activism and keeps slavery going permanently. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the reason the left likes to talk about 1619 when there were a handful of slaves and indentured servants, so they like to talk about the American founding. What they're concealing is the fact that it was Eli Whitney's invention of the cotton gin in 1793 that caused the massive proliferation of slave plantations in the South, and then in the 1820s led to the rise of a political party specifically with the purpose of protecting the plantation. That's the role of the Democratic Party. That's its history. This guy, Roland Martin, who used to be on CNN, he goes, Dinesh, you're misstating the history of the two parties. He goes, it's really a divide between the North and the South. This is part of what I'm talking about, the attempt ultimately to blame the South for the crimes of the Democrats. And when Abraham Lincoln spoke about the four horsemen, he was talking about the four great defenders of slavery. He named them. And of the four, one, Roger Taney, the guy who wrote the Dred Scott decision, Lincoln counted him as a Southerner, even though the guy was from Maryland. But nevertheless, let's count him as a Southerner. But interestingly, all the other three that he named were Northern Democrats. The former President Franklin Pierce, who's from New Hampshire. He mentioned James Buchanan, who is the current president at the time, from Pennsylvania, and Stephen Douglas, who was Lincoln's own rival from Illinois. So you notice this whole attempt to besmirch the South is camouflaging the crimes of the northern wing of the Democratic Party. I want to flash forward to a second tidbit that is worth knowing about because it ties into the so-called big switch. The importance of the big switch to the left is very obvious, right? Because if you're the party of slavery and segregation and terrorism and Jim Crow and the Ku Klux Klan, and if you did all those things, how do you get out of it? Short of admitting it, short of apologizing, short of paying some restitution, how do you get out of it? Well, the only way they get out of it is by basically saying, you know, at some point, the two parties switch sides. I mean, first of all, on the face of it, this is ludicrous. Not only the implausibility that it could have happened, but let's say the parties did switch sides. That still doesn't take all the crimes that you did and put them on someone else. I mean, if you're a thief and you live on this side of the street and your neighbor is a good guy and he lives on that side, and then you each trade homes, that doesn't trade your moral characters. That doesn't mean that you're exempt for all the evil deeds that you did. You still did them. But I do want to say a word about Goldwater because you'll sometimes hear from people who know that Goldwater did oppose the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and Goldwater did in fact win the Deep South. So Goldwater actually appears to be a sort of confirmation of what the left is saying about the big switch. The interesting fact, however, is that Goldwater is actually kind of an anomaly. Goldwater was first of all, he was a crusty, kind of very cantankerous, independent-minded guy. He was also economically a libertarian. His reasons for opposing the Civil Rights Act were libertarian. Essentially, there were small government reasons. The Civil Rights Act, by the way, outlaws not only government discrimination, but also private discrimination. That was Goldwater's problem right there. Now, Goldwater, by the way, was a founder of the Phoenix NAACP. He had helped to integrate the Phoenix schools. He had integrated the Arizona National Guard. He was actually not a bad guy. He was not a racist. But he had this economic libertarian objection to the Civil Rights Act, and he opposed it. And as a result, he won the Deep South, but he lost the rest of the country. And that's how Johnson won a landslide in 1964. Now, the very interesting thing about this is that Richard Nixon, who came after Goldwater, learned the lesson of Goldwater. Nixon, contrary to what the left says, didn't actually have a Southern strategy. Nixon had what can be called a Sun Belt strategy. Nixon realized that the country was changing. There was a new urban South that was developing, and Nixon targeted the cities of the South, going all the way to the west, all the way to Nixon's home state of California. So Nixon targeted in Florida cities like Tampa, Houston, Greenville, Dallas, Phoenix, San Diego. This was the Nixon strategy, not to go for the Deep South, but to go for the Upper South and the non-racist South. And that's what Nixon won. And that's how Nixon got in 68 and won an even bigger landslide in 72. Let me come now to the present, because we are in a big fight with the other side. And the important thing to remember is that they know that we are, in general, the party of the nice guys. They know this, and it is their secret weapon. It is their secret weapon because they know that we will not do to them what they do to us. They know that. And they count on it. They will knock down our monuments. They know we won't knock down their monuments. They will use the deep state against us. They know that when we come in, we won't use the deep state against them. They'll appoint judges who are nakedly partisan, knowing that when we come in, we will swear to appoint judges who respect the Constitution no matter which way it falls. So my message to you as I close is, it's time for us to stop being so nice. I think we've reached a point where we have to demand that these guys be held accountable across the board. No more wiping out your cell phones and then claiming immunity. No more setting things on fire and claiming you're just on fire for justice. The Republican Party needs to become more of a Trump party. It does. For sure. The fight needs to be enjoyable for us. We want to get to the point where when they attack us, we like it. We like it. The genius of Trump, Reagan was sort of above the fray. And there was a value to that, because Reagan was an actor. He could sort of skim over the heads of the media. The beauty of Trump is that he's in the fray. He moves forward. One little plug, if you'll permit me, Trump card. I think it's my best movie yet. I wanted to put it in the theater. The theaters were actually behind us, but they're still closed in a bunch of places. And so it was very frustrating that some people would be able to see it and other people wouldn't. So basically, it's going straight to video on demand, but you'll be able to see it on Apple iTunes or Google, Amazon Prime, any platform, any device, your phone, your big screen TV, and it's a movie that pulls out all the stops. It's hard-hitting. Let me close by saying that long-term, we cannot have these huge institutions of academia and the media and the whole entertainment industry and corporate America and sports world. We have to start creating our own institutions. We have to. We have to. I, too, use the language of unity. We are one America. But when you hear the other side and when you see them, it's very clear that now when we say the American flag, a certain part of us has to grudgingly recognize that it is now our flag and not theirs. It's our national anthem and not theirs. These are our colors and not theirs. They don't want them. We can't force them to sing the song. We can't force them to salute the troops. And so thinking through the implications of that ultimately shows that we are not BLEXITing just the Democratic Party. We are ultimately taking their whole world, everything in it, and we are saying, sayonara. We're out of here. Goodbye. Thank you very much.